Welcome to another episode of Before You Kill Yourself with your host, Leo Flowers. Today's episode is brought to us by BetterHelp, Help. It's exactly what you would write in the sand if you were stuck on an island, right? Help, help. And then you see the helicopter go by, you start waving. BetterHelp is that helicopter. They are the ones that will save you. They will pick you up. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? I know for me, it's been a sense of feeling inadequate or afraid of expressing my needs. Because, like, if I express my needs and they say no and they find out what I really want, they're going to leave and I'll be abandoned and I have to start all over again. And also just comparing myself to other people. Every time I compare, I get on social media and I see the amazing life that other people are living. It just makes me want to just curl up and stop doing everything that I'm doing. But BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating in under 48 hours. Now, I understand when you are in despair and you are spiraling, you just feel like the last thing I want to do is talk to anybody, but it's the best thing to do. When I was in trouble, when I couldn't see my way through the thickness, through the darkness, it was talking to someone, especially a professional therapist that guided me through. I still have a therapist. I have not only my own therapist, but I have a couples therapist. So me and my girlfriend have a therapist. Therapy, talking to someone is so beneficial, but it doesn't feel like it when you're in the midst of it. Now, I want you to remember that it's not a crisis line. BetterHelp is not self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online. BetterHelp is not the right solution for you if you have thoughts of hurting yourself or others. There is a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. The service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room with traditional therapy. You could kick back at the crib, at your house, in su casa, and get your therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches so they can make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling. And here's the kicker, ladies and gents. Financial aid is available. That's right. But you don't have to go to college. College ain't the only one doling out financial aid. BetterHelp has financial aid because BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily, right? Check them out. Visit betterhelp.com/Leo. That's right. I got a slash before the name. Go to betterhelp.com/Leo. That's better, HELP, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. Special offer. Here's a special offer. Check this out. This just came in just now. Special offer for my Before You Kill Yourself listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Leo. That's right. Just for tuning in, just for being a friend, an ally, just somebody who I enjoy spending my time with. 10% off your first month if you go to betterhelp.com/Leo. Let's go. On today's episode of Before You Kill Yourself, we have Ariel Garten, who co-founded Muse as an expression of her background in neuroscience, psychotherapy, and art, along with her dedication to bring easy-to-use and accessible tools for well-being to the masses. Ariel is also the co-host of Untitled Podcast, where she interviews groundbreaking neuroscientists, psychologists, and meditators to teach listeners about the brain, how it works, and how to use it to its full potential.
All right. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Just a little bloated, but besides that, life is good.
It happens. Hold on. I'm fixing my headphones. I can't hear you. I did catch the fact that you were bloated. All right, try this again.
Yeah. Yeah, I sent away for this company called Viome, Viome, and basically like you poop in a tube and they tell you the foods you should eat. So I'll be experimenting with that this week.
Yeah, I know Viome. It's a Silicon Valley company founded by Naveen Jain, and I know Naveen.
Yeah,
I've kind of never wanted to do it because one of the things they like tout is like maybe blueberries aren't good for you, and blueberries are my favorite food. So I don't want anybody letting me know I shouldn't eat blueberries.
So same here. I'm huge on having oatmeal for breakfast and throwing my blueberries in there, for some color and the antioxidants, of course. And of course, there's like a couple teardrops when, on my profile, they're like, well, it's not that I can't have blueberries, but like I can have like 0.5 ounces of blueberries. Like, why even have blueberries at that point if I can't just have a handful?
For real? You got the no blueberries? Oh, fuck. I'm so sorry.
Well, I know. It's like, why am I even going to the farmer's market anymore? I'm going there for the fresh blueberries. It's just sadness. Like the more you learn about yourself and like how to like live optimally or whatever, it's just like, there's like, I can't have blueberries. I can't have raspberries. It's just all the good things mangoes. My mom is from Belize and we grew up with nothing but mangoes and grapes in our backyard. And I can't have either one of those because the fiber is what causes my bloating. So
according to Viome.
But I've kind of known that. I've kind of been in tune with that.
Isn't the next, sorry, I'm on this for a second because I'm honestly curious. And just for the record, like I'm a biohacker. I'm deeply into understanding myself, my gut, my body, but I intentionally, and I've known Viome for years, and I've intentionally not done it because I didn't want the blueberry news. So it's so funny that you got that.
But what is, do you have a question? I'm sorry, I thought you were, go ahead.
Where it's going to go next isn't the whole point that once you understand your biome, then you can start to take probiotics that can shift it so you can eat blueberries or digest fiber more effectively?
So yes is the short answer. However, the trouble that I find is I love to travel, and I feel like you're a big traveler too. And
was pre-COVID, PC.
Pre-COVID, right. I'm just chomping at the bits right now. And when you when I travel, I want to taste all the things. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be like, oh, let me look at my blood type and see if I can have like. I just like whatever, like when I see, like we were just in Peru before this whole COVID thing broke out and we had to cut our trip short because we literally got a notice that in less than 24 hours, they weren't letting anybody out of Peru. So we were like 3 miles away from hiking Machu Picchu and then we had to turn it all around, come back. But my point is in Peru, you have these people who are living to a healthy age of 100. Easy. Mm-hmm. And women walking around with dark black hair in their 70s, like no grays. And all they're eating is just like potatoes and corn and I think quinoa. Like those are the three main staples. They throw in some trout, but the trout is not indigenous to their area. And I'm just like, why can't I just eat what they're eating? Like, why do I need all this extra poop in a tube thing? And these people are just like eating off the land. That seems to be the way to go. Is just eat off the land. But my point is, I want to eat what they're eating. They're living to 100. They're healthy. They're not walking around with canes. They don't have any glasses on. They're not limping. They're strong. They're carrying stuff on their head uphill for miles and miles. And it just seems the way to go.
Maybe the way to go is to carry stuff on your head uphill for miles and miles. No, really, like with all of the things that we do, exercise is one of the main things that leads to longevity.
It's so true. That is one of the biggest takeaways I took away from that trip also is not only was movement imperative, but collaborative movement even more fulfilling. They had this thing called Anye. And anye means reciprocity. So if one person's house or farm needs assistance, if they need help, they call on everybody else in the community to come help them. And if you decide that you want to be lazy for that day, they remember you. And then when you need help, nobody comes to help you because you didn't participate in anye. And so it's that collaborative movement. Everybody was planting potatoes together. So, but yeah, I'm glad you're into the biohacking thing. I saw in an interview somewhere that you that you were taking progesterone spray.
Yes.
Was that to help get pregnant, or was there some other additional benefit for the spray?
There is a cognitive benefit. So I actually had a mild TBI. After I gave birth, my progesterone dropped. I had a bump on my head and ended up with a little concussion. And I actually noticed that every time my progesterone peaked with my cycle, I was dramatically improving in my cognitive function. I was like getting back to normal again, and recognized that actually taking progesterone spray intranasally was my superpower. It was the thing that got me through the concussion. This is not medical advice and should not be, don't try this at home. But if you do, it actually really works, to me, at least.
Now, how did you discover that? Were you just spraying other things up your nose and then what was the trial? What was the trial? You had 20 different sprays. They weren't labeled. And you were like, that one feels.
That one feels zippy today.
Yeah.
That little white powder really made me really energetic. No, not what happened. It was all legal. So I started to notice that in the time of my cycle, the 2 weeks before my period, when we're getting incredibly graphic here. We've started with poop and now we're onto menstrual cycles. So when I was in the 2 weeks before my period, I would get better and better and better every day. And I thought it was the other interventions I was doing. I was doing hyperbaric oxygen and laser light therapy. I'm incredibly lucky that I have access to all these things because the head of Toronto General hyperbaric oxygen is a colleague of mine, and I'm doing studies together and blah, blah, blah. So I had access to all these incredible tools. And I assumed that every day I was getting better because of these other tools. And then it would be day 28, and all of a sudden I'd feel like crap again. And I wondered what happened. And I watched that cycle for 3 months, and then it was incredibly obvious what was happening. It was just my cycle. And so I started to experiment with oral progesterone. And there were a number of papers that were written about the application of oral progesterone for traumatic brain injury. They were using 100 milligrams of micronized progesterone. By weird chance, my brother was having dinner in Atlanta with one of the neuroscientists who actually wrote those papers, just complete random coincidence. So I started collaborating with him, and he's like, oh, you're behaving like my rats do when I give them progesterone. Fascinating that a human's doing this. And so in collaboration with him, I started to sort of figure out the dosing. I then was trying progesterone cream transdermally to see if that would give me more improvement. I then put it on my neck to try to get it into my brain faster without getting the rest of my body. And that was the first time that I was like, whoo, there's something happening here. This is working. And so then started to ideate on, what are the ways that you get stuff into your brain effectively? And it turns out that there was a reference to a nasal progesterone spray. So I started to experiment with that, and that really worked. Again, this is not medical advice. I'm not a medical doctor. This was my own experimentation. Don't try this at home, etc. But it was tremendous.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is potential uses for athletes. I played high school, college football, and I definitely know I have some glitches in the old cabeza, and I would imagine I haven't Googled anything. So once again, we're not doctors, but it makes me think that maybe progesterone would help with those who've maybe had concussions or struggling with CTE. But I'm just throwing that out there.
So I'm thinking we should rename this podcast to "We Are Not Doctors."
Yeah.
However. There's actually a hockey team. I gave a talk about the brain and sort of a little bit of my experience with progesterone slipped. And there was somebody in the audience who is actually a doctor from a hockey team. And he came up to me and said, actually, we're experimenting with this with our athletes as well, intranasal progesterone. It seems to really be working. They become slightly less aggressive, but they also get less concussions. And so it may well be making its way into the athletics field. And then I told a number of my colleagues who work in the space of specifically brain health, and they're looking at experimenting with their patients in formal trials.
I love it, and I love that you're into biohacking, because I could read about this stuff all day, the different ways to hack the brain, and I'm excited to have you on, Ariel. You're kind of like, and tell me if this is not a compliment, but when I look at the fact,
I can't wait to hear what you're going to say.
But when I look at the fact that you're trained as a neuroscientist, you're a mom, you're a psychotherapist, and you're also a fashion designer, the first thing that came to mind when I think about like the company Muse that you co-founded and you being a fashion designer was Steve Jobs. Because Steve Jobs was a person who, as we know, was into computers and all that stuff, but he also had this background in calligraphy. And it was that combination of calligraphy and having an eye for design that allowed him to make these, not just computers, but these beautiful products that we want to touch and feel and we get excited to receive. And I would imagine that you having a background in fashion design and also in, computers and so, like you put your heart and soul into design of the Muse headband.
Yes, I'm going to pause because my husband keeps walking up the stairs, and I'm just going to close the door. One second. We can edit out that little bit.
Oh, we're keeping it in. People need to know that things are. No, I'm joking. So yeah, I would imagine that in terms of the design of the Muse headband, that you had such an influence on it and brought your fashion design background into it. I just thought I was like Steve Jobs, and then I was like, who's her Wozniak?
So I don't totally feel Steve Jobs. It's both, a compliment, and there's also some detriment in there. But certainly the idea that having an eye for design is fundamental in technology is key. I mean, when we started by creating a tool that literally is a slim little brain computer interface that helps you meditate, when we started the path of creating this thing, it could have been very ugly, very large, very cumbersome, and very hard to use. And it was the unending emphasis on design and creating an experience that was going to feel really human and really beautiful and fit in with our, with our human ways of being, that people are going to actually want to wear and use, that was fundamental to its success. If you're making technology for technology's sake, you're screwed. You have to be making technology for human sake, technology that people want to use and want to have a part of their life because it's beautiful, it's elegant, it's simple, and it adds true benefit.
And we know, well, for the listeners out there, the Muse headband is to help facilitate meditation for those out there. But I'll have you explain it in a much more detailed aspect. But when you talk about facilitating an experience, we know that the hardest part for meditation is just getting to the mat. It's just sitting down. Once you sit down, then it kind of kicks in. But just even going to sit, just even going to take time for yourself, it's so challenging for people. So it makes sense that you really want to create an experience that you'll enjoy and that will nudge you and encourage you into meditation. Can you talk to us about the Muse headband and how it works and how it came about?
Absolutely. So Muse is a slim little device. It's kind of like a Fitbit for your brain. It tracks your brain activity during meditation, and it gives you real-time feedback to know when you're focused and when your mind is wandering. So we all know that meditation is good for you, but meditation can be really hard to do because you don't know what's going on inside your head. There's no little coach inside of there saying, oh, you're in the meditation zone. Great. Oh, your mind's wandering. Come on back. And so what we're able to do with Muse is be able to track specifically when you're in focused meditation, when you're in the zone, and when your mind is wandering. We don't know what the contents are. We don't care what the contents are, but we are able to give you real-time audio feedback to help you hear when you're in the zone and when you're out of the zone. And so it becomes this very rewarding experience to keep you into that focused attention zone, out of your negative wandering thoughts, and to really reinforce you to start and enhance your meditation practice. So the headband connects to an app on your phone. You hear audio feedback from your phone. And you're able to also see data after the fact. So you can see when your brain was wandering and when you were focused, and you can get lots of kind of feedback and data and reinforcement to actually see the progress of your meditation practice.
I love that because I'm all, being an athlete, and it's all about being in a zone, about how do you focus? How do you sit down and do the thing that you want to do for 30 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours, or however long the task takes. We're in such a hyper unfocused world where we're driving and texting. I know I'm guilty of it, and I'm ashamed to say it, but we're just we feel like we should be doing 12 things at once. And so to have something like some type of feedback to let us know when our mind is wandering is very helpful. For me, it's all about the breath. And so how does the headband help you versus just thinking about coming back to your breath, like that you learned in yoga and so many other movement modalities?
So if you're an experienced meditator and you know how to just stay with your breath and stay there and absolutely stay there, and your mind never wanders and you never miss the fact that it wandered and you always bring it back to your breath, then maybe you don't need a device. But for the rest of the 99.99999% of the world who is just getting our legs under us as a meditator, or even an experienced meditator who wants more insight into the practice, what Muse does is it actually notifies you when your mind has wandered. So the metaphor we use is your mind is like the weather. So when you're thinking or mind wandering, you hear it as stormy. And as you bring yourself to quiet, focused attention, it quiets the storm. So you have this very simple paradigm where you hear your mind as stormy when it's wandering, and then you hear it as calm when you're focused. And so you're really reinforced to stay in this focused attention spot. And you could be focusing your attention on your breath, which is the most common practice, or you could be focusing your attention on a point in your body. And for most people, when you meditate, you're sitting there, your mind wanders away from your breath, and you're on your grocery list, or you're on negative ruminating thoughts about the shitty thing that happened to you the other day. And you're like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes down the road on that thought because it's really compelling. And then you're like, oh, right, I was supposed to be meditating. Okay, back to my breath. And then that thought is really sticky and really compelling, and it pulls you back again. And then you're like, oh, shit, right, meditating. Okay, back to the breath. And so with Muse, you're actually informed instantaneously, like within 1 second, that your mind has wandered. And so that becomes your cue to then be like, right, mind wandered. I'm now observing my own mind much more effectively. I see that it's wandered. I'm now going to choose to bring my attention back to my breath. And that simple exercise, the moment of noticing that your mind is in a place where you don't want it to be, and being able to choose in that moment to take it away and put it on something neutral where you do want it to be, that is like the fundamental transformation of meditation. And that's how it delivers the incredible power to bring us back into the present moment, to take us out of our negative thoughts, to reduce our stress, anxiety, depression, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so with Muse, what we help you do is we help you identify that wandering and quickly come back to the present moment.
What I love about that is it's a way of teaching you that you don't have to get caught up in your thoughts. A lot of times we think if we're thinking about a thing, we should be thinking about that thing, and we should be getting lost in it. And it's just a way to kind of recenter yourself so that when you do go back to think about whatever it is that's bothering you or causing you angst, you have a bit more clarity than having all the emotions wrapped up around it. Because I initially, when people were talking about meditation and it's a way of clearing your mind and coming back to your breath and finding focus, And I was like, yeah, but that's not solving my problem. And I realized that you just because you're thinking about a problem doesn't mean you're working on a problem. And sometimes you have to take time for yourself, and taking time for yourself and finding stillness will then open up other pathways for you to see opportunities with dealing with whatever the issue is. Or you may even realize after a session of meditation, it's not a problem at all. You know, that thing that was weighing so heavily on you has just naturally dissipated, and you realize it's something that you can let go. But it's a way of reminding yourself you don't have to get caught up in a downward spiral, as Alex Korb would say.
Absolutely. So most of the time our mind is wandering, and most of the time our mind is wandering on something that is repetitive and not particularly helpful. And that actually makes us unhappy. And there was a study from Harvard University by two scientists, Killingsworth and Gilbert, and they had people have a little iPod in their hand. And every time they were mind wandering, there would be a notification and it would say, where's your mind now? Is it wandering or on the task that you're doing? They discovered that 46.9% of the time, our minds are wandering and not on the present moment and not on the task that we're doing. And they correlated that a wandering mind makes us unhappy, that we are significantly less happy when we're in those wandering thoughts than when we're doing whatever activity it is that's in front of us, even if it's an activity that's not that great. And we get caught up believing that we need to be in that wandering mind. This is, called rumination. This is what depression often looks like. You feel like you need to be thinking those thoughts, but that is just an illusion. You are just being sucked into a cycle that is not particularly helpful, that is not particularly solving a problem for you. It's just getting you stuck. And so when you recognize that you have the power to actually move your mind elsewhere, to choose the contents of your own mind, to make a choice and to put your mind elsewhere, it is extraordinarily liberating. And these are the beginning moments to moving yourself out of difficult places and just being in the here and now. Because the here and now is actually fine. It's our thoughts about the rest of the world and what could be and what might be and what other people are thinking and what's going on that are terrible. But the reality is the here and now actually is okay.
I love that. And Ariel, and so it doesn't look like we're sugarcoating things. For someone out there who's losing their house, right? And how do we address the real life issues that are taking place? How do we frame that? Because we're not saying don't think about the fact that your house might be foreclosed on, or that you might be on the cusp of losing your job. How are we talking about framing that? And I know that the focus here is meditation, but how would you frame that? Challenges that come up for you.
Sure. And there are, without a doubt, a lot of very real challenges going on today. Super real. The question is, where do you choose to spend your time and attention on them? So you might be losing your house, and that sucks, like beyond sucks. There's no question about it. It's very difficult. But we get caught in these loops of repeating it over and over and over and over again. And so rather than being in solution, where do I need to move next? What do I need to do? Who do I need to inform? What are the steps that I can take? Rather than being in solution, we get stuck in the negative cycle of it. We feel the intensity of the emotions of it, which cause negative ruminations, which cause more intensity of emotions in, as you put it, thank you, Alex Korb, the downward spiral. And when you're able to actually stop even for a moment that spiral, you're able to stop the ruminations about it. You're able to gain a little bit of relief and perspective. You can start to take the steps in the direction that are actually going to move you forward.
Now, I would okay, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I would imagine with all the slash marks, neuroscientist, mom, psychotherapist, and fashion, like that you probably have a mind that's was always, thinking 10 steps forward. Is that kind of why this has become part of your mission, this company, or was there some other reason that led you into being a co-founder of Muse?
So yeah, I had a mind that was doing a lot of things, and I didn't want to meditate way back then because I was like, I like all these thoughts; they're really helpful to me. And then you recognize that actually most of them really aren't helpful. Only a select number are helpful, and you don't have a way to actually have metacognition, the ability to actually see your own thinking, to know which ones are useful and moving you forward, and which ones are not. So I began the path of creating Muse actually when I was a psychotherapist. I would be teaching meditation to my patients, and they would go home and they would say that they were meditating, but it wasn't really successful. And actually, I was a terrible meditator at the time, too. I was teaching somebody to meditate, and I still sucked at meditation because my brain was racing all over the place, and I didn't want to give that up, to be honest. And so, but I knew the power of meditation. I knew the thousands of studies. I knew the impact that it makes in your life. And so it was through the process of creating Muse as a meditation tool that I was able to begin my own path of meditation. And now there are literally hundreds of thousands of people that meditate regularly with Muse and have seen the rollout and the improvements that meditation has made in their life. So for me, it's really been a mission to help people understand that you don't need to be stuck with the contents of your own mind. You don't need to be stuck in the place that you are in. There is a way to change the relationship with your brain. And it's, stepwise and it's slow and it's bit by bit, but it really can work, and it really does work.
And this is important. I want to emphasize, why I'm super excited about this technology and having you on is because so many of my listeners, we know with suicidality that they fall into a black and white thinking, a catastrophizing of events, and they get off center. They lose their focus. They become unmanned, as Abraham Lincoln says in his book. And this is just a reminder that we have an anchor, that we have an inner resource that we can come back to ground us. And for those of you who have struggled with meditation, this could be a way of getting you to the mat to sit with yourself. There's nothing harder. There's nothing harder in the world than to just sit with yourself. Think about isolation, where you got in trouble in school. And I think that's why meditation's become so hard for a lot of people. In school, if you got in trouble or even at home, they sent you to the corner. They were like, go sit in the corner with your thoughts. Like that was your punishment. And now we're trying to reframe it as being enlightenment. And I think that a lot of people still have that wiring of being with myself, especially in the corner, eyes closed, like it's a punishment, like I did something wrong. And there could be nothing further from the truth. So it's so important for me to re-educate people as to the importance of being able to be with yourself and how much knowing that you have that anchor can recenter you.
That's an incredibly important observation. And one of the things that can be really scary for someone who is a little intimidated by meditation is the idea that sitting alone with their thoughts is going to make it worse. And that's one of the ways that Muse can actually be really helpful. Because you're getting audio feedback, you're not actually alone with your thoughts. So you're getting audio when you're focused. There's little birds that chirp. It's really lovely. When your mind wanders away, rather than wandering into the thought and thinking about the thought and getting stuck in that negative thought, you hear the sound of a storm pick up or an ambient soundscape. We have a number of different soundscapes you can choose from. So you're not actually left alone with your thoughts. You're sitting there with a guide that is just telling you, hey, you're thinking, you probably want to stop doing this now. Let me encourage you back onto something neutral. The guide doesn't actually say that, but the audio encourages you to do that by getting quiet and loud with little reinforcing sounds. And so it's not the experience of sitting alone with your thoughts that can be so scary that you may be imagining. It's somebody that's there with you. And then we also have lots of guided content. So there's meditation teachers who can talk you through whatever it is that you're going through in your life. So you can find, meditations for morning joy or banish the cranky or, waking up feeling not so good or getting frustrated in line, like all of these things we have meditations for. So there's, guidance and inspiration to help move you out of the deep, dark place you may be in.
Yeah, I just had Garen Jones on, and he talked about how he listens to guided meditations because instead of music, because he wants the voice of the guided meditator to become his music, his songs. When we think about how we memorize a song, we don't try to memorize it. It's just that we've heard it over and over again. And so for those thoughts, those catastrophizing thoughts, those maladaptive thoughts that you're having, we can replace those. It's not about getting rid of it as much as it is about planting seeds of nourishing thoughts and adaptive thoughts. And so for me, that's been the value of listening to guided meditations for people who are like, what's the difference between sound and guided meditation? Sometimes you want to plant seeds of new thought into your brain so you can start to reframe the world that you're navigating.
Absolutely. There was
go ahead.
There was another place I wanted to go. Let me just think of what it was. I also want to take a moment and talk about acceptance.
Okay.
Because when we were talking about the guy whose house, let me start this again. I also want to take a moment and talk. Maybe I don't want to get into this now. So I'm presuming all this is going to be edited. I'm trying to think specifically about your audience and what's going to be most helpful to them. We're out of the podcast for a sec. So when we talked about the difficult situation or we talk about COVID, one of the things that's so powerful is being able to simply accept what is and not hold on to what used to be. And I think that's a concept that's important for us to cover, but I'm afraid that it might trigger somebody as I go there. So I'm trying to kind of...
Well, I tell you what, go ahead and speak with passion. And if there's anything that I deem or you deem triggering, we could always edit it out. But, I also think that, and I talk to my listeners about this, sometimes I will have something in an episode that is triggering, and I'll let them know up front that it may be triggering, and here's the reason why I left it in. And here's how I want you to listen to it and frame it. And here's a situation I want you to listen to this in. So I do give a pre-warning as to something that might be triggering. However, with so many people struggling with losing their homes, grieving the loss of a relationship, illness, we need to have real conversations. This isn't the time to gloss over things. So at the same time, we have to talk about what's happening in the world in order to help people move through it.
Cool. So let's go there in a minute. I'll pick up on your thought about guided meditations, and then we can move into acceptance. Yes, absolutely. Guided meditations can be really, really powerful to help you essentially reprogram your brain. It's very easy to get stuck in a negative place, or it's very easy to get stuck with a particular belief. And when you start to open yourself to wanting to change that belief, it can be hard to do so. And one of the techniques that I use is to actually make tapes on my own phone. I mean, it's not a tape. There's no physical tape. I use the voice recorder on my iPhone. And I will say something that maybe not entirely what I believe at the moment, but what I actually know to be true, I just can't feel to be true, or what other people have told me should be true, but I can't feel to be true. It might be phrases like I love myself deeply, or I'm deeply accepted, or I am enough, or, any range of things. And I'll put them on my phone in my own voice, telling myself over and over again, and I will listen to it, and I will find myself shift and change in my openness and acceptance to it. And I'll start with phrases like, maybe it is possible that I could be enough. And then I'll work to, probably it's likely that I'm enough. And then I'll work up to I am enough. And through each of these little shifts of language, I open more and more and more till my brain and body come to accept this idea. So guided meditations can be incredibly powerful tools to hear somebody else in your ear telling you these things as you allow yourself bit by bit to open and shift and accept to them. Sometimes it's a beautiful voice in your ear and you totally, you just go with what they say and it makes you feel amazing. And sometimes you hear something like, I don't know if that's true for me, but I'm willing to try that idea on. And that is the first step to shifting the neural pathways and making change to being comfortable in the here and now.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And then you were talking about acceptance. Well, actually, I want to ping off of that because I also will, in the middle of the night, at times where I can't sleep, I will record a message to myself. So like during my moments of like quote unquote insomnia, or I'm just having racing thoughts at night, I'll record something to myself as a message to listen to in the morning, and also maybe as a I'll either journal, meditate, or I'll voice record a message to myself as a way of expressing my feelings or navigating through my thoughts, et cetera. And I found that at night, it's more powerful for me to record my voice and then listen to it at another time, especially like when I'm driving. There's something soothing. A lot of people don't like the sound of their voice, but I don't know if I got an ego, but I love the sound of my voice. So
it's a beautiful voice, absolutely mellifluous.
I'm gonna look up mellifluous, and so yeah, I love
honey sweet.
So I love that you mentioned that. I was like, am I the only one that does this? But I appreciate you sharing that part. And then you said you were going to talk about acceptance. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So I think acceptance is an incredibly important tool to be using, particularly in these times when life is genuinely hard and stuff is changing around us rapidly. And the sensation of change actually has an emotion with a feeling around it. So sometimes we feel, thrown for a loop, and that's just the feeling of change. And so when you notice what's going on and you accept like, oh, okay, this is changing. That's the feeling of change. Oh, I'm depressed. This is the feeling of depression. I see where I'm at. This is what it is. And that is okay. That it's okay to be here and now. That it's okay. That is fundamental. And sometimes it can be really hard to accept that it's okay. I mean, we're in places where the world is fundamentally shifting around us. And the real question that you have to ask yourself is, how do you adapt to that? Because we're so tempted to hold on to what was that we get obsessed with the past and how terrible the future will be because it is no longer the past. But we don't know what the future holds. And one thing I know to be true for my days is I can wake up feeling terrible in the morning and midday have an amazing day or have wonderful little things happen to me. And if I'm open to shifting my experience throughout the day and not holding on to what came before, it fundamentally transforms my experience of that day and therefore the experience of my life. And within COVID, one of the greatest tools for me has been acceptance of what is and not holding on to the past. And this is a tremendous meditation teaching that we don't need to hold on to what was, because that's where the suffering is. And when we let go of wanting to be the same as it was before and being open to what it might be in the future without having to know, that is liberation. And there is the possibility that the future will be okay. We are incredibly adaptable humans. We go through terribly shitty things in our life. People die. We lose our homes. People get sick. And then something happens in the next moment, and the next moment you're still here and it's okay. You find another way of living. You find another way of being. We become resilient. And from that terrible fall have, really rich experiences that come out of it that allow us to grow and learn. We can exist in a world that in some sense happens for us and not to us. It can be very easy for something bad to happen and be like, why did this happen to me? But when you ask yourself, how can I learn and grow from it? Then the question becomes, why did this happen for me? Or, hey, this happened for me. How am I shifting, changing, and growing through it? So there's this really fundamental tendency of acceptance that can seem so hard to do, but once you do, it makes all of this so much easier because it's no longer a fight.
I'm so glad you mentioned acceptance, because it really is. The suffering is the wanting things to be different than how they are. And so many people who I hear struggling, during this quarantine and COVID is they're like, oh, why can't we get back to the way things were? I loved how the way, do you ever think we'll get back to the way things were? And it's, if you can't accept that this might be the new normal, then it's going to take you longer to adapt. Viktor Frankl in his book Man's Search for Meaning talked about the difference between the people who were able to survive the Holocaust versus the ones who either now I don't want to say died early, but the ones who weren't able to really uh, thrive or make a living afterwards was the ones who were able to survive mentally and emotionally were the ones who accepted their situation and the life as it was, and they turned inward, to whatever their inner resources were, versus the people who were trying to fight against everything that was happening in every moment and expending all that energy. And not to say that you shouldn't put up a fight and you shouldn't protest, but you have to know how to do that and still be able to come back to yourself and sit with yourself. So there's power in what you're saying in terms of acceptance and being able to be with yourself.
All of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, all four of them, on my mom's side and on my dad's side. In my dad's side, my grandmother and grandfather were in labor camps. My grandfather in Siberia, my grandmother in Uzbekistan in the Fergana Valley. And then on my mom's side, they were in Budapest. They're all Jews. They're in Budapest. My grandmother was in hiding in a Swedish safe house. She watched everybody being marched out of the Swedish safe house, including her husband, my grandfather. They were taken to the edge of the Danube, and they were about to be shot into the Danube. My grandmother called Raoul Wallenberg. He showed up at the side of the Danube, the river there, declared them all Swedish citizens, brought them back to the house. That is just one of the hundreds of stories that my relatives went through enduring the Holocaust. Many of them didn't survive because they were killed along the way. Luckily, my four grandparents did. But yeah, there's some hard stuff. But they came, they didn't know in that moment when they were in a labor camp or their relative was being literally shot into the river, without exaggeration. They didn't know in that moment what life was going to be like after, or if there was a life after. The amazing life that they knew was completely lost. Their beautiful childhoods completely lost. But for all four of them, they, moved their way out of it. They moved to another city. They eventually came to North America, established themselves in New York and in Toronto, went on to have amazing lives, fantastic children, beautiful grandchildren, doing awesome things in the world, have beautiful experiences, travel, have money, have all of the things they had wanted. And in that moment when it seemed like it was so low, because literally your family's being shot at your feet, at that moment when they thought they couldn't go on because how was it ever going to be okay again? It was okay again. Life shifted. Life changed. They just needed to survive that moment. They just needed to get through that moment and to the next one and to keep holding on to the hope and the knowledge that they would figure it out and that the world around them would eventually change and that they would make the best of their life. And in every case, they did.
I love that you said moment. And
okay, I'm going to cry.
Well, okay. There's a couple things I want to
Sorry, I was not
unpack.
expecting that story to come out.
And one is thank you for sharing that. And obviously it was an emotional story for you, and it's what comes to mind when you share that story is, I would imagine for you as a kid, and even maybe now as an adult, when you are struggling with challenges, personal challenges, work challenges, etc., that was there a part of you that felt guilty for feeling unhinged by what was going on in your life when you think about what your grandparents had to go through? Does that make sense? Was there a part of you that felt like you had to diminish your experiences because it could never compare to what they had undergone?
Absolutely. There were my grandmother was a Holocaust speaker, so she would go throughout North America and talk about her experiences. On the other side, they never talked about it at all. But it was always this shadow above me that whatever was happening, it was nothing compared to what they went through and the resilience that they gained. And, I was lucky to learn from their direct experience and their stories, and to learn firsthand what resilience looked like and who you could become even going through something so terrible. But it was always, there was always just a little part of me that's like, no matter how bad it is, I'm not being shot into the river right now. It's okay. I can deal with this.
And were there other lessons that, but you can, okay, so, because this is fascinating to me. What you're going through is not being shot in the river. However, what you're going through is affecting you on some level. So what's the next thought process or next step after that? Because, and this is important because there are so many people who are comparing their lives to the lives of their parents or their grandparents and feel like, well, I should be able to get through this if my parents or grandparents went through what they went through. But yet what you're going through is still a thing. Like whether it's, going back to losing your house, or maybe you lost a limb in the war where maybe your grandparents lost 3 limbs. It's like, it's still your experiences, and it still could be traumatizing for you. What's your next step after that?
So my next step after that is to recognize that this thing could have an impact on me, and that's okay. I'm very aware within myself of what looks like the vestiges of trauma. And, when I see myself having a reaction or experience, to be like, oh, that's just a trauma reaction within me. I know I might be overreacting because it's a trauma experience, or I know I might be reacting and feeling this deeply, and it's okay to feel that because this is a trauma response coming out. And so these days, with, my significantly more psychotherapeutically educated mind, I can observe what's happening inside me. I can see the experience of it. I can feel the emotions of it without getting pulled into, guilt or frustration or anger or why me. And I can just have that experience and then from there take any lessons or learnings and move on into how I use this as a part of becoming a better person, how I use this as a part of becoming more resilient, becoming more compassionately aware of others and what they might be going through, because it could feel like this too. Becoming more connected to the experience of being human, because this is part of the experience of being human. So, these days I have a lot of tools to help myself frame and experience things in ways that are really resilient. Earlier, I would say I would feel them. I would feel like it sucked. But there was always this tiny little spark inside me that still just enjoyed the act of being human through whatever was happening. It's like, whoa, this really sucks. But at least I get to experience this and I'm alive. And I think possibly from my grandparents' experience, that sense of like, but at least I get to experience this and I'm here and now, and like, this is what it is to be human, and sometimes it sucks, and that's okay. That was always in there.
I love that. At least I get to experience this, right? It's like,
even if it sucks,
yeah,
even if this is like the worst, it's like, well, this is what being human is. Okay, let's see what tomorrow brings.
I love that. And I think I heard you have a daughter? Was that her in the background a little bit? That's
my little 4-year-old child. He just came home from his 4th day of school ever.
So he's excited. He has all the things he wants to share. Yeah. So that brings to mind then, because we know that the Muse band is something that we put on our heads, and there are sensors up front and behind the ears. So my question is this something that we would then expand for pregnant moms to put on a baby? I guess what I'm really asking is, is there an age that we would want to have our kids start wearing these headbands or learning how to meditate? Or how are you teaching your son who's 4 how to focus and be present?
Sure.
There was like 12 questions in there.
That's okay. At least you didn't ask me another incredibly popular question, which is, can I put it on my dog? So the answer for that one is no, there's too much hair in the way. and we don't have a one that fits on babies yet. In terms of teaching your child to meditate, I started teaching my child probably at about 2, and we did it just with breathing. So we didn't call it meditation. Just when he was angry or upset or wanted something, I would say 3 deep breaths. And then I would give him the thing. Like if he really wanted his tablet and he was freaking out and I didn't mind giving it to him at that moment, it's like, okay, I'll give you your tablet. 3 deep breaths. And then as soon as he did those deep breaths, I would reinforce, how do you feel now? See, when you do those deep breaths, you feel different. How do you feel? Calm? And he would always say, yes, calm, or say whatever he felt like he needed to say in order to get his tablet. but he was starting to make those associations and actually start to observe. And from there, it expanded into 10 deep breaths. He's not at the point where he can sit patiently with his eyes closed and meditate with me, although he pretends to sometimes, which is sweet. And we have in one of the other apps that we make at Muse, we have an app called Meditation Studio. And in there's a full collection of guided meditations for children. So we'll do those because he actually really likes to sit with the guidance. And they're meditations like, imagining yourself as a rainbow and every color is a different power or feeling that you have, or being on a magic carpet ride. And so that's been a great way to start him into the meditation practice. And we hear it commonly with families where dad will bring home a Muse or mom will, and then the teenage kids start using it, and then everybody's using the content, and it really starts to bring meditation into the family when one person starts doing it and starts sharing it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And earlier you referred to, having different tools for resilience. Do you have a morning routine because, and I ask this because, I've watched you in different interviews and your present, and you're always so calm and focused. Always is not the word, but when I see you, you're calm and focused. And I wonder, what's your morning routine? What's that pregame ritual?
So my morning routine now, it obviously, changes. COVID, children, all of these things impact your life. My current morning routine is to wake up at 7 with my child, which is utterly delightful. And then as my now husband takes him to school, which we can now do, I do a 30-minute meditation, and it typically begins with a laughter meditation. So I will start laughing about what's going on in my life, how I'm feeling, the experience of being. I just start laughing, and that starts to loosen all of the pieces. And then I'll move into a focused attention practice with Muse, or a heart-centered practice, or one of our guided meditations. And then I get up, eat, stretch, and get on my day.
I love that.
So through COVID, I have found beginning my day with a laughter meditation to be transformational.
Yeah, I've heard of laughter yoga and laughter workouts. I've never heard of the laughter meditation. I'm going to check that out.
It's a part of laughter yoga.
Okay.
So within laughter yoga, you also do laughter meditations. And you literally just sit there and laugh. And once you start doing it enough, you can just laugh from nothing. Just the act of being, I can just laugh. But initially, there are things like laughter yoga online groups. Just search, probably Google search laughter yoga. And there's lots of laughter yoga online groups where people get on and just start laughing with each other. And there's prompts and little games that get you to start laughing. And sometimes people show up and they're like, this is really stupid. But then you sort of start to tickle and giggle. And then you sort of start to feel a little loosening. And you're like, okay, that felt kind of good. Maybe I'll come back next week. And then you just get more and more into it. And as you do it, the anxiety and the stress and the fight or flight and the amygdala freaking out and the tension just starts to loosen and melt away as you're physically releasing the stuff from your body. It is so good. And the positive endorphins that you get, all the positive neurochemistry is really helpful.
Having millions of users with the Muse, I'm sure you've gotten incredible stories as to its effectiveness and efficacy. Can you share with us a story that has resonated with you?
Oh, there are so many. But I just had an interview with a woman, I host a podcast called Untangle, and there was this amazing Zen priest called Reverend Angel, who was my podcast guest, and I had invited her on the podcast because I loved her writings and her teachings. She's just so beautiful. And as we started, I was just explaining a little bit of my background. I'm like, and I found this thing, Muse. And she's like, Muse? Muse saved my relationship. And I was like, what? This is like a highly ordained Zen priest, like somebody who's really deeply into meditation. I'm like, you saved your relationship? So she was with, she's queer. She was with a woman who she's still with many years later, who was not into meditation and really was resistant to it, but was an athlete. And so Reverend Angel had given her a Muse to start to use, and within 3 months could see like a dramatic change in how they're relating in the relationship, the kinds of fights that they weren't having so much anymore, the space that there was in the relationship, the way they were acting towards each other. And she like literally actually said, Muse saved my relationship with the person she's still with today. So that just happened a few hours ago. So that's the one that's top of mind. But, we've heard so many beautiful, beautiful stories. And we've also been part of probably 200 different research studies now. So Mayo Clinic has been using Muse with breast cancer patients awaiting surgery. They just published a paper demonstrating that these breast cancer patients awaiting surgery improve their quality of life and decrease their stress and fatigue through the cancer care process using Muse. So there's lots of, really heartfelt stories that are amazing and demonstrate the transformational power of meditation.
Ariel, I want to thank you so much for taking this time to be on a podcast and share your passion. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you feel like would be of value to the listeners?
If there is one idea to leave everyone with, it is that we are fundamentally lovable, worthy, great human beings. And it is nothing but the voices in our own head that tell us otherwise, and the beliefs that those voices have instilled inside of us. It's from babyhood. When you come out of the womb, you are lovely. You are a perfect and whole human. And it's only the way that we perceive ourselves or perceive how the world sees us that shifts that fact. The fact is still true. It is just our perception that has shifted. And you have the ability to change how you think about and see yourself in the world. We can all change our thoughts and those thought patterns. It can be long and arduous work, but it happens. It happens every day. So bit by bit, as you shift the way that you think, you can feel better and understand that you are better. So know that somewhere inside of you is that amazing, capable creature. And as you shift your thoughts, he or she will be uncovered.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love that you said whole human. What's the name of the book that I'm reading? I think it's like Thich Nhat Hanh or something. And he was saying how, it's Sarah Wilson's First We Make the Beast Beautiful. And she said that instead of focusing so much on am I happy, to focus more on am I whole. And so when you said whole human, it just brought up to mind that passage from the book. And so that just resonated with me, and I wanted to share that. A last question that I ask of all my guests, because I always imagine there's one person listening in who may be on the precipice of ending their life. Before you kill yourself, what would you say to them, Ariel?
I'm thinking so I don't get this one wrong. There are other options. It may not seem like it right now, but tomorrow can and will be better. Move back, get help, and see how much better tomorrow will be.
Thank you so much, Ariel. Move back, get better, and see how much better tomorrow will be. I love that. Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in. Ariel, please share with how they can get in contact with you or uh, uh, find the Muse product. Where can they plug all the things?
Sure. So you can find me on all the socials at Choose Muse. You can also find my contact and all the information about Muse at choosemuse.com/welcome. That's CHOOSEMUSE.com/welcome. And then there's also a discount code for listeners, and that is welcome10.
And all that will be listed in the show notes. Thank you so much, Ariel. Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in. Remember, this podcast is not a substitute for you going to get help, for you calling the 1-800-SUICIDE or 1-800-273-TALK or the other numbers listed for LGBTQIAP. If you are overseas, they're international numbers. If you can't talk, you can text. There are group messages. There are Facebook group messages. Talk to someone. Call an enemy. Call customer service. There's somebody who will talk to you. Your story needs to be heard. Get help, but it starts with you and you taking that first step. I thank you so much for tuning in. You can always go to thrivewithleo.com for one-on-one coaching with yours truly. Let's get to tomorrow together. Thank you so much, Ariel.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you for all your work.
And just a quick reminder, BetterHelp is not a crisis line and wants you to start living a happier life today. So go to BetterHelp, HELP /Leo, and enjoy your 10% off today. Today, you can start your journey to being happy, to achieving your goals, to feeling heard and connected. You can start communicating now. It's worldwide, and you can join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional now. Go to betterhelp.com /Leo to start your journey today.